The loss aversion trap. Loss aversion is a primal instinct baked into human biology. In the ancient world, losing meant dying. Lose food, lose shelter, lose your tribe, lose your chance to survive. That fear has been etched into the brain over tens of thousands of years, and today it still comes alive in every red candle. Traders don't react to charts, they react to ancestral memory. And that's why loss aversion is the deadliest trap in the market. Kahneman proved that the pain of losing is several times stronger than the pleasure of gaining. But in the markets, a loss isn't just money, it's ego, hope, trust, reputation, and self-worth. Every losing trade feels like a slap to the identity. No one wants to get slapped, so traders avoid it. They avoid it by holding, by denying, by whispering to themselves, it'll come back. And that's the exact moment the market turns them into prey. Here's the irony. In trading, people don't lose because they take losses. They lose because they refuse to take them. If you've ever held a losing position for hours, days, even weeks, you know the feeling. You're not holding because of your analysis. You're not holding because the market shows signs of reversal. You're holding because you can't stand closing that trade in the red. You can't accept a number that feels like it negates your value as a trader. Losing a trade doesn't feel like losing money. It feels like losing yourself. And humans will do anything not to lose themselves. Loss aversion makes traders behave irrationally. They cut winners instantly, but cling to losers like an ex who already moved on. A green trade makes them anxious, but a red trade makes them numb. It's absurd. When they're up, they fear the gain will disappear. When they're down, they hope the loss will disappear. Traders don't hold losing positions because of logic. They hold because they fear the pain of admitting, I was wrong. How do you admit that when your ego needed dozens of wins to build that confidence? How do you accept defeat when defeat feels like failure? Loss isn't painful because of the money. It's painful because it shakes the image you've built of yourself. Nietzsche said humans create beliefs not because they're true, but because they help avoid pain. Traders create reasons to keep a losing trade, not because it has a real chance to recover, but because those reasons protect them from emotional pain. Telling yourself it's just a pullback sounds analytical, but in reality, it's emotional anesthesia. Market makers don't need to be smarter than you. They only need to understand that you fear losing more than you desire winning. Once they know that, the game becomes trivial. They push price against your entry. They make you hurt enough to panic. And right when you finally cut the loss out of fear, the price snaps back. Not because they hunted you specifically, but because fear makes you predictable. That's crowd psychology. The herd fears the same way, runs the same direction, and loses in the same rhythm. Have you ever wondered why a winning trade makes you nervous, but a losing one makes you reckless? Because in profit, you feel the need to protect. In loss, you feel the need to rescue. And when you're in rescue mode, mistakes follow. A panicked human doesn't make good decisions. A panicked trader makes catastrophic ones. They use money to try to buy back a sense of safety. Remember the last time you widened a stop loss to give it more room. You weren't giving the market more room. You were giving your emotions more room. You didn't need analysis space. You needed escape space. Humans suffer more from imagination than reality, Marcus Aurelius said. Traders fear losses not because of the actual number, but because of the stories they imagine. What happens if I lose more? What if I can't bounce back? What will people think? Those imagined stories make losses feel heavier than they are. In a single session, loss aversion doesn't show up once. It shows up tick by tick. Each little shake makes the fear whisper, close it, don't let it get worse. But that voice isn't coming from the market. It's coming from the scars of past losses. You're not reacting to the present. You're reacting to past pain that never healed. And that past drives you more than you realize. Jung said what you don't make conscious will control your life as fate. In trading, loss aversion is that fate. It makes you enter trades you shouldn't, exit trades you shouldn't, and break discipline at the worst possible moments. You think you're trading the market, but in reality, you're trading your psychological wounds. The scariest part isn't losing money. The scariest part is that loss aversion destroys your edge. Great traders aren't the ones who lose less. They're the ones who aren't afraid to lose. When you're not afraid, You can see the market clearly, without color, without emotional echoes. When you're not afraid, your decisions come from your plan, not from your nerves. Stoics said all pain becomes lighter once you face it directly. Loss is the same. When you stop running from losing trades, when you stop sugarcoating hope, when you can close a losing position as calmly as cutting off a dead limb, that's when you evolve. That's when you rise above the herd. The more you fear losing, the more you lose. The more you avoid small losses, the larger they become. The more you protect your ego, the more you destroy yourself. And the market never gets tired of teaching these lessons through sudden drops, cold reversals, and liquidity sweeps that wipe out your last bit of hope. The market doesn't require bravery, but it punishes fear. Because traders trapped by loss aversion don't act by system, they act by emotion. And emotion has one destination: failure. Escaping this trap isn't about eliminating emotion. You can't erase instincts carved by evolution. But you can do something stronger: confront the fear. When you confront it, it loses its power. When you can close a losing trade without trembling, you become free. When you understand that losses are a cost, not a punishment, you step into a higher tier of trading. The loss aversion trap only catches those who fear the truth. But for those willing to face it, loss becomes a tool. It touches you, but it doesn't break you. It warns you, but it doesn't paralyze you. It teaches discipline, but doesn't destroy your will. And one day, you'll look back at the losing trades that once terrified you and realize you were never afraid of the market. You were afraid of the weakest part of yourself. When you finally face that weak part, the market no longer has the power to hurt you. You lose, but you don't fall apart. You take heat, but you stay steady. You take losses, but you don't fear them. And that's the moment you escape the trap, the moment you start becoming a real trader, the expectation trap. Have you ever wondered why every time you place a trade, your mind instantly paints a bright future? Why you always imagine catching the reversal, reading the flow perfectly, exiting right at the top or bottom? And have you ever noticed how those beautiful scenarios almost never actually happen? It's not because the market is against you. It's because you're trading against the most dangerous force in finance: your own expectations. Expectation is a syringe loaded with dopamine. It excites you before you hit the button. It makes you believe you're about to win. But that same dopamine blinds you to reality. Traders don't lose because markets move. They lose because they believe markets should move according to their expectations. Expectation is trading a future that hasn't happened yet, then suffering when reality refuses to comply. The market doesn't care what you want, but you're obsessed with what you want to the point you can't see what's actually happening. New traders never begin with truth. They begin with dreams. Dreams of freedom, control, big wins. But every dream demands a price. In trading, that price is the shattering of expectations. Every time the market moves the wrong way, every time price doesn't behave the way you imagined, you feel betrayed. But betrayed by who? Not the market. Betrayed by your own expectations. In psychology, expectation is not simple hope. It's a rationalized illusion. The human brain fills uncertainty with stories. When it doesn't know, it invents a logical path forward and convinces you it'll play out that way. People trust the story they create more than they trust randomness. And when that story collapses, the pain isn't about the loss, it's about the story breaking. Nothing is more brutal than the collapse of an expectation. A trader expecting a breakout fails to see a weakening setup. A trader expecting a reversal ignores the dominant trend. A trader expecting profit to come forgets the market owes them nothing. And every time expectation blinds them, it pushes them deeper into a chain of mistakes. Expectation appears at every stage of a trade. Before entering, you expect to be right. When it moves a little, you expect it to run further. When it pulls back, you expect a bounce. When it reverses, you expect it to come back. And when it's about to hit your stop, you expect a miracle. When no miracle comes, you feel as if the world betrayed you. Konrad Lorenz said people don't suffer from reality. They suffer from the destruction of their illusions. Expectation is the most subtle illusion traders nurture. It tells them this time is different. It tells them losing streaks will stop on their own. It tells them the market will reward their effort. But the market rewards no one. The market reflects probability, nothing more. What makes the expectation trap so dangerous is that it always disguises itself as reasonable optimism. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it speaks in perfectly logical lines. This setup is clean, it should work. The trend is strong, it should continue. This support is solid, it should bounce. You think you're analyzing, but you're actually dressing up your desires in the costume of analysis. Expectation masquerades as reason, and once it wraps itself around your mind, it's hard to detect. Expectation also drives you to invent artificial goals. You expect to make 1% a day. You expect never to lose a week. You expect your account to grow monthly. But the market doesn't know your calendar. It won't move because you want to hit a target today. It won't accelerate because your monthly P&L is behind. And when expectation isn't met, you trade recklessly to force the market to make it up to you. At that point, you're no longer trading your system. You're defending a wounded expectation. A trader holds losses out of fear, but a trader holds winners out of expectation. They want more. They want to prove they read the market right. They want the trade to become legendary. But expectation leads to the same outcome. When the market reverses, they don't exit because they expect a return. And expectation kills them again. In existential philosophy, Sartre said the greatest suffering comes from trying to force the world to match your internal picture of it. Traders suffer because they try to force the market to match their expectations. But the market is pure reality, untouched by anyone's desires. These expectations aren't purely internal. They're built externally, from social media success stories, screenshots of profits, advertisements promising to turn $100 into $1 million, and courses claiming to predict markets. Traders see those and begin expecting the same for themselves. They don't realize those stories are the tip of an iceberg. Beneath it lies a mountain of hidden failures. Then they wonder why they never reach those results. They wonder why every trade begins with high expectations but ends with low outcomes. But they don't see that the higher the expectation, the easier it is to get hurt. A small loss becomes a tragedy. A minor pullback becomes disappointment. And disappointment accumulates until they feel exhausted, confused, directionless. Escaping the expectation trap is not about expecting less. You can't eliminate expectation. It's part of being human. But you can learn not to let expectation drive your actions. You can learn to let the market speak first and respond afterward, instead of imagining first and forcing the market to follow. A mature trader doesn't expect the market to move their way. They expect themselves to respond correctly. They expect to stay disciplined. They expect long-term probability to reflect their edge. They expect from themselves, not from the chart. A trader not controlled by expectation enters without tension, holds without hope, exits without disappointment. When they win, they don't think, I should have gotten more. When they lose, they don't think it should have worked. They see everything as it is, not as they want it to be. Expectation is a double-edged sword. It can push you to improve, but if you don't understand how it operates, it will cut you from behind. Every time you whisper, this one is definitely a winner, you put yourself in a vulnerable position. Every time you paint a beautiful future, you tie yourself to something outside your control. The market didn't disappoint you. The market was simply the market. Your expectations disappointed you. In trading, expectation is the last thing you must learn to let go of. When expectation dies, the market becomes clear. When expectation fades, you become honest. And when you stop trading your own stories, you finally start trading for real. The overconfidence trap. On Wall Street and across global markets, most accounts don't blow up because of losses. They blow up because of wins. Not because the profits are dangerous in themselves, but because those profits awaken a monster in your brain, the illusion of invincibility. That's the moment you start believing you see through the market, believing you've figured out the rules, believing that this time you deserve a bigger win. And the moment you believe you know what the market is doing is the moment you stop seeing the market at all. You only see your ego. No one escapes this trap. Even legendary traders, people worshipped as the Einsteins of finance, have fallen to the same delusion. Humans are built for flawed judgment. Philosophy calls it hubris. Psychology calls it overconfidence bias. In trading, we call it the silent killer. Slow, cold, odorless, and without warning. You never realize you're in the trap. There's no signal. It doesn't come from pain, fear, or loss. It comes from the very thing you're proud of, your wins. And that's what makes it terrifying. You think you're managing risk. You think you're reading price action correctly. You look at a chart and see signals that are actually noise. You break your rules. You size up. You add positions. You believe you're in your prime. But the truth is, you're no longer trading the market. You're feeding your own fantasy of control. This trap is so dangerous that behavioral researchers call it the illusion of knowledge. The more you know, the more your brain lies to you that you truly understand. You read more books, you watch more charts, you gain more experience, and your brain says, good, now you get it. But markets cannot be understood linearly. They're complex, irrational, ever-shifting systems. You don't understand the market, you only understand the version of it you want to believe. Overconfidence is a one-way ticket to ruin. Remember this, overconfident traders never think they're wrong. They think the market is wrong. And that's why they always pay the highest price. It all begins with a few small wins. You win 3 trades in a row. Dopamine spikes. Self-esteem rises. Your belief system rewires itself. Your brain quietly disables your warnings, your limits, your boundaries. You become a different version of yourself, one with no defenses. That's when you start playing the game of I know. I know price will go this way. I know the market will come back. I know this setup can't lose. I know I'm better than before. But that I know isn't based on reality. It's based on a lucky streak. And humans have a notorious flaw. We attribute success to skill and failure to outside forces. You win, I'm good. You lose, it's the news. You win, I read the structure perfectly. You lose, liquidity got swept. You turn yourself into a victim of your own intellect. On Wall Street, there's an old saying, markets punish confidence and reward humility. But beginners do the opposite. They're humble when they win and arrogant when they lose. Veterans, they're most humble right after a big win because they know a win proves nothing. The market is simply handing you a piece of candy to see if you'll turn it into a trap. No one dies from a single losing trade. Most die from a winning trade that makes them forget who they are. It's ironic how overconfidence makes people stupid. Socrates once said, all ignorance begins with the illusion of knowledge. You believe you know, and in that instant, every door to learning slams shut. In trading, that's the moment you drop from master to puppet. Overconfidence doesn't make you stronger. It makes you blind. You stop seeing risk. You stop seeing warnings. You stop seeing your own limits. You think you're advancing, but you're drifting away from discipline. When you're overconfident, you stop trading the plan. You trade the feeling. You trade what seems right. And nothing is more dangerous than a decision that feels right but isn't backed by discipline. The market lets overconfident traders survive long enough to inflate their delusion. Then it strikes. That's the rule of the game. It wants you to believe you're special, smart, different. Then it takes everything back: your money, your confidence, your mental stability. In psychology, overconfidence is described as a distorting lens. You see an exaggerated version of yourself, not the real one. And when that inflated ego makes financial decisions, the outcome is always the same. You lose far more than you expected. Overconfident traders never think they're overconfident. They think they're just trusting their ability. They think they have enough experience. They think they're mentally tough. But the market doesn't care about experience or toughness. It only cares about who lets their guard down. This trap makes no noise. It gives no warning. It makes you feel stronger, smarter, more justified. It strokes your ego. It gives you the illusion of being chosen. And once you step deeper, it slams the door shut. The cost of overconfidence isn't a losing trade. It's loss of control. You increase size, you revenge trade, you abandon the plan. You convince yourself this trade must win. At that moment, you're no longer a trader. You're a gambler who doesn't know he's gambling. If you've ever blown up after a hot streak, you've met this trap. If you've ever asked, why did I lose my composure like that? You've met this trap. If you've ever felt on top of the world only for the market to erase everything, you've hit its bullseye. The essence of the overconfidence trap is simple. It makes you believe you control the market when the market is merely allowing you to exist temporarily. And the final lesson? The strongest trader isn't the one who believes they're invincible. It's the one who stays humble. even when they're winning. Humility isn't self-doubt. Humility is knowing the market owes you nothing. Accept that, and you escape the overconfidence trap. Reject it, and you repeat the same cycle. Win, inflate, lose control, collapse. Trading isn't a game to prove how good you are. It's a game to prove how well you can control yourself. Only those who understand their limits can ever push beyond the markets. The inner self-destruction trap. The inner self-destruction trap is the worst version of you operating from your subconscious. People never lose because they lack knowledge. People lose because they can't handle the truth about themselves. Psychology calls it self-sabotage. Philosophy calls it the shadow of the ego. Trading calls it the end of every account. It doesn't come from fear. It doesn't come from anger. It doesn't come from external forces. It comes from a deadly cocktail of inner conflict, repeated behaviors, and a wounded ego. You don't lose because the market is stronger than you. You lose because you're fighting yourself. Self-destruction appears when you feel unworthy of good outcomes. This is the dark truth few are willing to face. Many traders don't realize they fear success more than failure. Failure is familiar. Failure is safe. Failure allows them to maintain the story. I'm still learning. But success makes them anxious. Success creates responsibility. Success forces them to uphold higher standards. And when they don't believe they're disciplined or mature enough, they subconsciously destroy everything just to retreat to their comfort zone, the zone of a fragile ego. That's why so many traders do everything right for weeks, only to ruin it all in one night. That's why people follow discipline flawlessly, then collapse on a single trade. That's why they take insane risks right when their account looks the best. It's not because they're stupid. It's because deep down, they don't believe they deserve the version of themselves that's succeeding. People always live according to the image they believe about themselves, not the image they want. Self-destruction is a structured mechanism, not a random event. It has three classic forms. 1, you repeat old mistakes even though you know how to avoid them. When markets are calm, you're rational. But when volatility hits, you fall back into old patterns as if pre-programmed. That's not carelessness. It's a clear signal of a deep belief that I'll mess it up again. 2, you destroy what's working because your emotions can't handle stability. Stability feels scary to a mind trained on chaos. Too much discipline feels abnormal. So your brain manufactures chaos to return to what feels normal, a space where emotions dictate decisions. 3, you find ways to punish yourself. Nobody talks about this, but it's brutally real. Some people trade to punish themselves. Every loss feels like that's right, as if losing brings them back to the broken self-image they secretly believe. Self-sabotage isn't a behavior. It's the result of an unhealed psychological wound. Ever wonder why your risk-taking increases as your account grows? Why the closer you get to your best self, the harder you destroy it? Because you're not trading to win. You're trading to confirm the image you hold of yourself. If you believe you're someone who always fails, you'll create failure. If you believe you're not good enough to succeed, you'll blow the account just before achieving it. If you believe you can't control your emotions, you'll find ways to prove it every chance you get. The market doesn't measure intelligence. The market measures how much you believe in yourself. In Eastern philosophy, there's a concept called the shadow ego, the part of you everyone has but nobody admits. It isn't evil. It's wounded, and when something is in pain, it destroys. Self-destruction isn't what you want to do. It's what a long-held false belief forces you to do. To break the self-destruction trap, you don't need a new trading strategy. You need a new psychological identity. You can't build discipline on a foundation of self-doubt. You can't become a strong trader by resisting pain instead of healing it. You can't keep money if you don't believe you deserve it. Self-sabotage will keep returning as long as you think the problem is the market, the indicator, the strategy, or the entry signal. It's not. The problem is that you bring a mind into the market that isn't built to protect your own capital. You want to break the self-destruction trap? Do what almost no trader is willing to do. Radical honesty with yourself. Ask yourself, why do I need the market to feel valuable? Why do I break discipline the moment things go well? Why can't I tolerate being right consistently? Why do I ruin things exactly when they matter most? you'll discover the answers have nothing to do with charts. They're about wounds, about memory, about beliefs you've carried for years, about limits you placed on yourself. You can't become a better trader without becoming a better human being. The market doesn't kill you, you kill yourself. But if you can self-destruct, you can also self-rebirth. When you confront your inner self-destruction, it loses its power over you. When you realize you deserve success, you stop destroying it. When you stop craving chaos, you begin craving discipline. When you build a strong ego, the market stops being a test. It becomes an environment, and you become the one who decides the outcome. The final trap isn't the market. It's not price structure. It's not crowd psychology. It's not big players. It's not volatility. It's not news. The final trap is you, and the final exam is also you. When you conquer yourself, there are no traps left to fear. You stop fighting shadows. You stop destroying your own progress. You become a true trader, someone who not only navigates the market, but masters the very mind that once tried to drag them to the bottom. The control trap. What hurts traders the most isn't losing money. The real pain is the helpless realization that they control nothing except themselves. But they hate admitting that. The brain hates randomness. Human psychology hates drifting in an unpredictable world. So it builds a dangerous illusion. I control the outcome. This is the control trap, the most sophisticated psychological trap ever created to protect the ego, and the most brutal one because it blinds traders to reality. You think you control your entries, you think you steer your positions, you think you're prepared, but the moment you hit buy or sell, you step into a world where you control exactly one thing, your reaction. Everything else? The market does whatever it wants, but people hate that truth. To keep the ego from shattering, the brain creates a subtle illusion, the illusion of control. Kahneman and Tversky describe it as a psychological mechanism that keeps humans functional in a chaotic world. We must believe we hold power. Otherwise, we crumble. But in financial markets, where volatility is merciless, that illusion doesn't save you. It destroys you. A trader looks at a chart and thinks they're reading the market. In reality, they're reading their own hopes and fears projected onto every candle. A trader looks at a trading system and thinks they're managing risk, but all they're really doing is labeling chaos to feel safer. They think a clean pattern, a familiar indicator, a setup that worked before somehow makes the future predictable. But the market never signs a contract with the past. You win a few trades in a row. You think, I've got this market figured out. You size up. You start believing you're in control. But that feeling is the most dangerous dopamine hit in trading. It tricks you into thinking you control reality, when reality is just giving you temporary mercy. The market is like a cold, powerful adversary. It lets you win just enough for you to believe you have power. Then one sudden shakeout, one engulfing candle, one fake breakout rips you back to the ground, tearing apart the illusion you built with blind confidence. Jung called this the shadow of the ego, the part inside us that craves power, that wants to know more than others, that wants to believe everything is in our hands. Nietzsche said humans don't seek truth, they seek the feeling of power. And that craving to feel strong is exactly what traps traders. Think about a time you held a losing trade too long. Why did you hold it? Not because the market still had potential, not because your system signaled anything. You held it because you believed you still controlled the situation. You believed just a bit more and the market would turn. But you were clinging to an illusion to avoid facing a harsh truth. You were wrong. Every time traders lose, they redraw patterns, change timeframes, tweak EMAs, or add indicators to complete the picture. But really, they're trying to patch up the feeling of control. They think making the chart more complicated will help them understand the market better. But understanding more does not equal controlling anything. In fact, the more you try to force the market into your models, the deeper you trap yourself in a psychological prison. Stoicism teaches, distinguish between what you can control and what you cannot. Epictetus. People nod at that. But on the markets, they forget everything. They think they control profit. They don't. They think they control randomness. They don't. The only things they control, position size, stop loss, and their reactions. So why do humans cling to the illusion of control even when it hurts them? Because uncertainty kills the ego. People would rather believe in an illusion than accept they are tiny compared to a $1 trillion marketplace. People would rather live in a simulation of certainty than confront randomness. And the market, powered by millions of minds with the same delusions, becomes an endless reservoir of blind confidence. Traders don't fail because they lack knowledge. They fail because they feel like they're in control. Ever feel like the market is against you? It's not the market, it's your illusion collapsing. Every time you try to prove your trade right, you're fighting, not the chart, but your ego. Every time you revenge trade to get it back, you're trying to regain not money, but the illusion of power the market just took from you. The market isn't your enemy. It's a giant mirror reflecting a truth you keep hiding. You cannot control it. You can only control yourself. The painful part? Most traders only realize this after blowing up their accounts. Only when the ego shatters do they finally see who holds the reins. And the irony is brutal. The more you try to control the more the market controls you. So how do you escape the control trap? Not by trying to understand more, not by adding indicators, systems, or signals. You escape by accepting one truth. You will never control the market. You can only control yourself, your discipline, your risk, your reactions, your expectations, your emotions. Winners aren't the ones who predict correctly. Winners are the ones who don't let their ego enslave them to the illusion. They know the market is chaotic, and their job isn't to control the chaos. It's to navigate themselves through it with clarity. The control trap collapses only when you face the truth. You cannot control the market. You can only control you. The market doesn't care who you are, but your mindset determines everything. Subscribe to Trading Mindset Lab to master emotional control, discipline, and the psychology that turns winning into a habit.